This last week has made me extremely angry, and I'm sure many of you at home are angry as well. But what's really getting to me is the gaslighting. It's the constant gaslighting by the government and by government-led institutions. And there's clearly a cancer in our government, and there's a root to that cancer. And I strongly believe, that is the CPS, also known as the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, they have had a litany of failures that I'd sit here all hour, which I'm sure Darren wouldn't like very much, all hour telling you about. But just to name a few, the Saville case, Mohammed Al-Fayed, the post office scandal. And now we're talking about this awful act of what I call terrorism in Southport. Now, the police in Merseyside have, of course, come out with a little bit of a fight this week because they claimed that the CPS gagged them from releasing what I would call crucial public information about Rudakubana during and after that awful massacre. Now, who are the CPS to tell this country what they should and shouldn't know? And let's have a little look at what they've done previously. If we just reflect back on the murder, the awful murder of Joe Cox, for example, well, immediately, within 24 hours, the press are reporting this is a far-right terrorist. And the evidence the CPS gave for terrorism was that there were Nazi materials found at home and that he was shouting Britain first. So, a lone wolf? Because that's what we're calling Rudakubana. We look at him, well, we've got him stating that he wants a white genocide, the ricin found in his room, the jihadi materials, and the attempt for him to go and commit a massacre at school that was stopped by his father. That, to me, screams terrorism. And I'm sure most of you at home probably agree. But the CPS and the courts don't agree on that. They think this was a lone wolf, the Amazon killer, they've dubbed him. They're blaming everybody but their own failure. I think there is a cancer in our country, and it seems to me that it is rooting back every time to the CPS, which was used to be led by now our Prime Minister. So I'm asking the panel tonight whether we need to drain the swamp, shut down the CPS, and bring in something brand new that is actually reflective of what Brits want in 2025.
Well, Kai, I'm assuming that you disagree with that.
Well, what good does shutting down the CPS do to all of this? I mean, it gives advice to police pre-charge, it helps with charging decisions, it helps prosecute people for crimes, it helps with appeals, and then also extradition. So I don't really see... If you want a criminal law system in this country that properly prosecutes people, yes, there are issues right now, many to do with the defunding of public bodies in the 14 years of Tory government that we've had. But if you want a properly functioning criminal justice system in this country, you're saying defund the central body.
Oh, I'm saying get rid of it entirely.
Prosecutions against the criminals that we just talked about.
Let me just address some of your points, Kai. Let me address some of your points. You're saying that 14 years, of course, this, of the Tories. Jimmy Saville case was before. That was before the Tories. The Mohammed Al-Fayed case was before the Tories were in government. The grooming gangs have been going on before. The CPS's failures go back decades. It's not just 10 years.
That's why your argument is so tenuous, because you're relying on decades-old crimes to
the grooming gangs are now. The Rudakubana case is now. The Rudakubana case is now. The grooming gang scandal is happening now. And last year alone, Keir Starmer's reforms were slammed by an independent body, saying there's still victim shaming, there's still rape blaming.
I'm also going to add to this, Kai, that the problem with every institution in this country, including the CPS, is every time you add another layer, which is what the CPS is, we've got it in the NHS, another layer and another layer, you actually just create a more expensive behemoth of an industry, but actually many, many more gaps through which the people who pay for it fall.
Who's in charge? Who's in charge?
Every institution.
Are the lawyers running our country now?
Yes.
Left-wing lawyers run. It's not a democracy anymore.
I actually think it goes back to the Human Rights Act, the ECHR, the Equality Act. All of these things mean that actually people are turning a blind eye to certain crimes if they're committed by people with certain skin colours than they do the other way around.
Keir Starmer saying that the CPS said he couldn't do it because he'd be prejudiced, he couldn't release the information about him being a terrorist. However, they did it for these other cases.
So I agree with everything you've said, but I think the CPS is just one block in a much bigger problem.
Of course it is, yeah. Of course it is.
It has a particular worldview, and when atrocities occur that challenge that worldview, they obfuscate. But you know what the thing is that really infuriates me is the way that Starmer has chosen to obfuscate is to pick the things that he has particular issues with, social media and tech oligarchs, and he said, well, they must be the problems that have led to this atrocity, and that I find morally reprehensible.
Of course, Starmer would deny that and say, you're wrong.
How has Amazon or how has social media got anything to do with this tragedy?
It just
that was a cop-out.
It was a complete cop-out.
It is the gaslighting.
For the cover-up.
Yeah, it's the gaslighting that Alex mentioned. But you're right, every single one of these institutions has similarly been infected with DEI.
Yes.
And once there's DEI, nothing...
And can I just say...
Like Paul, who's a member, says the problem with the CPS is DEI. Every single DEI role should be made redundant.
I couldn't agree more.
We need a Trump.
We do. I mean, look, I feel so angry about this because it's so obvious to every British person this is a terrorist attack. It's caused terror. It's the bare minimum. And when they're calling him a lone wolf and saying they need to find new ways to tackle these sorts of things. Well, what was Joe Cox's murderer then? Was he a lone wolf?
the Manchester bomber?
Yes, exactly. So look, listen, it feels to me that the CPS have had some sort of hostile takeover. The police are being gagged by them. The Prime Minister's being gagged by them. Who else is being gagged by the CPS who clearly can't do their jobs properly?
The problem, the only takeover of the CPS has been by the fact that we don't pay criminal lawyers in this country well enough. If we want a CPS that functions, and by the way, this is just so classic, shut down the CPS as if that's an answer. No, let's actually identify what the problems are. The problems are we don't pay criminal lawyers enough in this country. If we do that, then we'll have a functioning CPS.
I know,
That's the answer, not shutting it down.
Another one. Honestly, right. And of course, the CPS and, well, actually, it was the CPS decision say that it wasn't terrorism. I'll let everyone else at home make up their minds on that.